Feeling cool for the time of year. We do have sunny spells today and then more in the way of showers as we head midweek. We have an area of low pressure out there today though, and this cold front is bringing outbreaks of rain across Wales, the Midlands, the southeast of England, and continuing to break up as it pushes its way southwards. To the north of that though, plenty of sunny spells across Northern Ireland, much of Scotland, Northern England, and eventually into Wales. It is feeling cool though for the time of year, and with this northerly wind along eastern coast, it's going to be feeling particularly cool here. Through Monday evening then, we actually hold on to a good deal of sunshine initially across much of Scotland, so a fine end to the day here, but to the west we'll start to see the next weather system approaching, bringing some outbreaks of rain across the far west of Scotland. Across Northern Ireland, some late evening sunshine, and that persists across much of southern Scotland into Northern England, Wales and the south. Still some showery outbreaks of rain still possible across the southern parts of England. So through Monday evening, we have the next weather front approaching across Scotland and Northern Ireland. So cloud thickening here, some showery outbreaks of rain. Ahead of that, though, we hold on to the clearest skies across the southwest of England into East Anglia and the southeast. So here it's going to be another chilly night to come. Temperatures falling away. We could see a touch of frost, but milder now across Scotland and Northern Ireland as we start Tuesday morning, given the amount of cloud cover. So a bright but chilly start across the southeast. That cloud will start building as we head into the afternoon with showery outbreaks of rain again across Wales and the Midlands. Behind that, it is a case of sunny spells and frequent showers, but for all of us, still rather cool, but hopefully in the sunshine up to 17 degrees.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Thank you, Britain, for making GB News Radio such a huge success. Whether you're in the car, on the go, or listening at home, thank you for choosing us as your radio station.
This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. Expect disruptions. In Kirklees, the M62 eastbound exit at junction 26 has lane closures for barrier repairs. The M65 eastbound exit at junction 5 in Blackburn with Darwen is entirely closed for repairs. In Leicestershire, one lane is closed on the M1 northbound at junction 20 for roadworks. In Solihull, two lanes are blocked on the M42 northbound between junctions 5A and 6 for maintenance. In Warwickshire, M40 northbound has two lanes shut between junctions 10 and 12. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Bowl.
They are under no illusion.
Ray.
Are you a human trafficker?
Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get us on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What I'm going to do now, they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I ever got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It is 9:30 on Monday, the 11th of May, live across the UK, Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
Well, the PM fights back this morning. Sir Keir Starmer will promise sweeping changes after those disastrous local election results.
I think we have to set out the path ahead, and that's what I intend to do in coming days. How we rebuild, how we convince people about hope for the future, and we haven't done enough of that.
As he got it in him, frankly. The Labour rebellion, of course, is growing. The obscure backbencher, Catherine West, is urging swift action to replace Starmer. 40 MPs so far agree, but not the Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson.
Fundamentally disagree. You know, I think Catherine is a good colleague and we get on very well, but I think she's just wrong on this point.
Meanwhile, Wes Streeting is plotting a takeover. The Health Secretary is preparing a case for leadership if a contest is triggered.
And is Angela Rayner appears to be backing Andy Burnham. The former Deputy Prime Minister says this is Labour's last chance as she threw her weight behind the Greater Manchester MP. Can the PM hang on?
The countdown is on. Less than half an hour now until the Prime Minister has to make the speech of his political life. Can he say enough to stave off the circling sharks?
We've said it before, make or break for the Prime Minister, another reset by the Prime Minister, another U-turn by the Prime Minister. This one does feel potentially terminal for the Prime Minister. If he doesn't get this speech right, Catherine West, an obscure North London MP, is going to press send, challenge. She says she's got 10 MPs back. She needs 81, which is 20% of the parliamentary party. But if she gets those 80, then it's over.
That's right.
But I don't
I'm
think
sure
she'll
that's
get them.
true. I agree, because I think the mood will still be, as much as he is very much, the Prime Minister is very much disliked by his backbenchers, they've been out on the doorsteps for the last month hearing how unpopular he is, there's still no clear alternative. And so many of them are holding out for Burnham.
Yeah.
And if they go now, he won't win
That's
because
right.
he's not in Parliament.
And Angela Rayner's in a very difficult position because she's still got this HMRC investigation hanging over her. What if, during a leadership contest where she's a candidate, HMRC say, you screwed up big time and here's a £5,000 fine?
Well, that would be a
the end of
disaster.
her. Be a disaster for Labour.
The trouble is they are torn between people who might be genuinely popular with the public, Wes Streeting maybe, Shabana Mahmood, maybe lean into the kind of reform voters that have been switching from Labour, and then people who could win amongst the party, like Ed Miliband. There's nobody who fits in both categories.
Ed Miliband, if he goes, in the unlikely event there's a challenge this week and Wes Streeting is putting his name forward, he will run.
I'm sure there'll be a lot who try to run, but none of them want to stick the dagger in. None of them want to trigger it. Are they going to leave it to Catherine West? Will she be successful? We'll probably find out today.
Et tu, Brutus.
Exactly.
Remember what Caesar said as the blade went in? Brutus still probably the most famous assassin all these years later. Tell us what you think. Of course, we will be bringing you that speech. It's got to be the speech of his life. He's never made a decent speech in his life, as far as I can recall.
It's the first for everything, Andrew.
Exactly. But send your views, post your comments by visiting
gbnews.com/your say. But first, here's your 60-second news update with Sophia Wensler.
Andrew, Miriam, thank you and good morning. Your headlines at 9:33. The Prime Minister will give a major speech this morning in a fight to save his job amid mounting calls for him to resign following disastrous election results. Sir Keir Starmer is set to promise bolder action to tackle big challenges facing the country and will promise to put Britain at the heart of Europe. President Donald Trump has dismissed Iran's response to US proposals to end the war as totally unacceptable. Iranian media is reporting Tehran has rejected the US plan, saying it would have meant Iran's submission to Trump's excessive demands. A repatriation flight carrying 20 British passengers evacuated from a hantavirus-hit cruise ship has landed back in the UK, where they have now been taken to isolate at the UK's initial COVID quarantine site. Football fans are being urged to watch out for fraud ahead of the World Cup, with victims of ticket scams losing £215 on average. Research by Lloyds suggests football ticket scams increased by 36% during the current Premier League season. Those are the headlines for now. More news at the top of the hour.
Tune into GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, on Nation Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Hello, good morning and welcome. This is Britain's Newsroom. We're live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
Well, it's D-Day for the Prime Minister. He's delivering, have you heard this before, Miriam? A reset speech after Labour were completely demolished in those local elections last week, especially in areas which voted for Brexit. And we understand from leaks about his speech this morning, he's going to take the country closer to the European Union. What's he thinking of?
Extraordinary. You're right. It's not the first time I've heard that, Andrew. In fact, I think there have been 3 resets so far. We've had 6 milestones, 5 targets. Goodness knows what else. What are we going to get today? Well, last night, Angela Rayner called on Sir Keir Starmer to set out the change the nation needs in what she says is Labour's last chance.
And Wes Streeting, he's the Health Secretary, he's also told the Prime Minister he's preparing his case to become the next PM, claiming he's the only candidate who can beat Reform UK because Redbridge Council in East London, where he's an MP, saw off the Reform challenge.
Yes, indeed. Well, at least 40 Labour MPs now are publicly calling on the Prime Minister to resign, and the backbencher Catherine West has threatened to trigger a leadership contest. So we're asking, can Sir Keir hang on to his job? Deja vu, Andrew.
It is. Part of me wants him to, because I'm really terrified by the prospect of Ed Miliband in particular becoming next Prime Minister. He's a net zero fanatic. He's whacked us with all those huge bills. It all started when he was in Gordon Brown's premiership. He's a complete zealot. And also, we've had him before, and the country rejected him in 2015 when he was Labour leader. Big time.
Has he improved? What worries me, Andrew, is that none of them seem to be correctly analysing the situation. Lots and lots of people have switched directly from Labour to Reform. So from what was seen as a left-wing party to what is seen as a right-wing party. I don't think it's as simple as that at all, by any means. But if they want to win those voters back, they should be leaning into the kind of things that Reform voters really care about. Stronger borders, lower taxes, stop making everything woke. Those are the kind of things that people want. So why is he going after the EU?
If Labour MPs who might be about to topple Keir Starmer think it's just a question of having a different face in number 10, they've got it completely wrong. Labour is facing an existential crisis that could be the end of the road for Labour because they have abandoned working class voters in their droves for years and years and years. A party that can't define what a woman is. I'm sorry, all that stuff has alienated Labour voters for years. And talking of which, he's brought back Harriet Harman to advise on women, who is somebody who struggles to define a woman.
And Gordon Brown, to advise on the economy, who sold off all our gold. There's an absolutely brilliant quote by Jason Cowley, writing in The Times. He used to be, of course, the editor of the New Statesman, so Labour's kind of in-house magazine. It's an absolutely brilliant quote about the Labour Party. The self-styled party of work has found itself to be caricatured as the party of welfare and immigration, and it doesn't know what to do about it. And that's very true, isn't it?
I think
they're no longer representing working people, and they don't know how to get back there.
It's extraordinary, isn't it? Because a couple of years after the last election, we thought it was the Tory party that was on the verge of extinction. It still may be. It still may be. But Labour is in the emergency ward right now. It really is.
Or maybe Wes Streeting, as the Health Secretary can say.
Well, we're going to cross live now. And if you're just listening on the radio, we've just got images of that great political titan, Gordon Brown. You hear, we heard Peter Khan on the radio on GB News this morning. He's the business secretary, saying, our party is brimming with talent. Why did you bring back Gordon Brown? Hasn't been Prime Minister for 16 years.
Maybe that is the talent he's thinking about.
Why did you bring back Gordon Brown? Why did you bring back Harriet Harman, who was Ed Miliband's deputy? That went well.
And what does it say to all the younger people on the back benches? Anyway, we'll cross now to somebody who is sure to have an opinion on this, our GB News Deputy Political Editor, Tom Harwood. Tom, a great day to be a political journalist, not such a great day to be Prime Minister.
Oh, I think that's certainly true. The Prime Minister is really going to have to push the boat out in, 20 minutes' time or so. He's going to have to make what is being widely described as the speech of his political life. But I would gently suggest that that's maybe not the highest bar. I mean, we're not exactly going to expect tear down this wall or fight them on the beaches or I have a dream. This isn't the sort of person Keir Starmer is. He became Prime Minister because he was seen as a stable pair of hands in a chaotic time. He was seen as someone who would be boring, yes, perfunctory, yes, but stable. And the problem is that it's turned out to be that he is a boring man, but he hasn't delivered a boring government. No, it's been anything but stable. So we've got this peculiar sort of confounding situation where a man who became Prime Minister because he could deliver this sort of monotonous tone, a steady drumbeat of just getting on with the job, no bells, no whistles, no frills, is suddenly going to have to pull out a showstopper. I'm not quite sure how that's all going to work, but ultimately it may not actually come down to how this speech is delivered. It may come down to the shadow campaigns that are going on in the background. Ultimately, this is looking like it's coming down to two camps: Burnham and Streeting. Why am I discounting Angela Rayner here? Because Angela Rayner is arguing for a delay in the contest. She wants a later race, and a later race is widely seen to favour Burnham. Frankly, if the race happens sooner, it's going to favour Streeting. If nothing happens today, that'll be because behind the scenes, Andy Burnham's lobbying of Labour MPs has been successful.
Tom Harwood, thank you so much for that, and we'll have more from Tom later. There could be a number of developments from that building today.
We're going to talk now to Jonathan Haslam, who's the former Downing Street Director of Communications, who knows a little bit about Prime Ministers who are under siege because he had the misfortune to work for John Major right at the very end when it was you were permanently under siege. Jonathan, morning to you. Tell us, what will it be like inside the Downing Street bunker right now?
Oh, good morning, Andrew, and morning, Miriam, too. Well, I think everybody's just about getting over a bit of post-traumatic stress disorder, which they had from the results from Thursday. And they will be looking at this speech not in its just entity, but they'll be looking at it as part of a continuum. So certainly there's been a lot of mention of the King's speech, and they will be trying to say this is a bit of a package, and Keir has to put himself out as a man who's going to be able to address the country's woes. And I think the thing that would be striking me at the moment, without having seen the speech, is what else is in it? Because if all we're talking about are the issues that have been trailed, then are they really hitting the right spot with the British public and the people who have now gone away to reform or have gone to the Greens? And that's the big thing. Does he actually have his finger on the pulse of what really matters to people at the moment? So I think we're talking, as you and Miriam have considered during the programme, we're talking about immigration, we're talking about welfare, we're talking about law and order, and we're talking about the other big thing, which I'm afraid no interview is complete without, a consideration about what the implications are for our country domestically from artificial intelligence and what it means for the next generations. My children and my grandchildren, what sort of country are they going to grow up into? We're a relatively rich country. We've got a lot going for us, a lot of brain power in this country, great universities. How is all of this going to be harnessed?
Sorry to interrupt, but I just can't see any of those things, as sensible as they may be, being able to turn the tide for Keir Starmer. We've had him as our Prime Minister for nearly 2 years now. People know well enough his abilities, his politics, and they don't like what they've seen. Could even the most gifted communications speech in the world now turn things around for him?
Well, no single speech is going to turn anything around, which is why I was talking about a package. And we've got to remember as well that Keir Starmer's developed a very, very thick skin, and he's got limpet-like capabilities. He's also got a party which can't make up its mind on a front runner, somebody who really could just take the ball and run with it, because there are many tribes, like most parties in the two-party system. Most of those parties have got different factions that are looking for their particular brand of leader. Nobody fits all the boxes. So they'll be hoping that people will see through and avoid the sort of truss drama that we saw with Boris Johnson swapping and changing, cabinet ministers resigning left, right and centre. So they'll be prepared for a little bit of a long haul, but not much of a long haul. So I think during the course of this year, we are going to see a change. It's how it's orchestrated and what the party does to do it in the most effective way. And as you've mentioned, Andy Burnham, of course, has no skin in the game at the moment in terms of being able to put himself forward. He's not an MP. So there's plenty to play for here. He will be looking for time. He'll be looking for a bit of a reset. And lurking behind him is still a tranche of papers about Peter Mandelson that have not yet been released. And so you don't get a clear playing field at the moment. Now, they've got a pretty good idea what's in those papers, so they should be able to roll the pitch. But there's still a lot. There are many, many pitfalls awaiting him.
Well, Jonathan Haslam, thank you so much for your time this morning.
It would be to be a fly on the wall right now as he rehearses the speech yet again, as he practices it in front of his wife, Lady Vic, his communications team. He's on his 4th communications secretary. Quite extraordinary. 4 communications secretaries in 2 years. And don't keep blaming the communications secretaries. If you ain't got anything to communicate, they can't do the job.
And the analysis seems to be, well, people aren't seeing change quick enough. That's not the point. They don't like the change that Labour are trying to bring in. Well, still ahead, diagnosis by phone. NHS patients are being told they have cancer through apps and phone calls. What about duty of care?
Up next, that Prime Minister's speech coming up, the biggest of his career as that major Labour revolt is brewing. But first, if you want some holiday sun, here's the forecast.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello. There is plenty of sunny spells across Europe, but also the risk of some showers that could turn thundery and still pleasant in that sunshine. We do have this area of low pressure close to Portugal and Spain, and that is just driving showers as we head through Tuesday. Drier, though, across much of France and across Italy. Still a few showers in the mix, but across the Mediterranean, generally fine and settled and feeling warm. There'll be a mixture of sunny spells elsewhere and temperatures in the low 20s.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I was reading a little bit about her, and she's this diversity trainer herself. So she basically knows the system, doesn't she? And what has happened is that she has actually been disparaging to a colleague of hers, right, referring him as the white man, saying that she's had issues with white men before. And by the way, she was actually fired from her job, not because of anything else, but because of complaints by her own staff, underperformance. And instead of, taking that on board, she decided to use her identity. She decided to weaponize identity, and she got a whole lot of money for that, and that's actually wrong.
Part of it is this kind of inability to accept that there could, oh my gosh, you're not going to believe this, but some people can be racist towards other people, and it doesn't have to just be, racism is bad, of course, everywhere, but there's this sort of inability to recognise that maybe someone who's a person of colour, as she's referred to in the article, might be racist towards white people. And the courts just wouldn't go along with that.
This redefinition of racism itself. So what we're doing is playing these semantic games. Actually, you can't be racist to white people because there's no power. Black and brown people don't have power. Well, actually, if you think about it, it's flipped a little bit, right? Because the institutions, our governments, even internationally, the UN and the ECHR, they're all on our side now. We kind of have the power. They've flipped it. They've overcorrected so much that it's become very taboo to think that white people do face discrimination, do face hostility, do face dehumanization. They're seen just as a category, as a block. It's very wrong, and it doesn't bring us together.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Breaking news, live updates, stories that matter.
From the heart of the GB Newsroom to every corner of Britain, with our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
GB News bulletins are there to deliver the latest news that matters to you.
Bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 to 10. You're watching and listening to Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Well, as you know, the Labour MP Catherine West says if the Cabinet Minister doesn't challenge Sir Keir Starmer by the end of the day, she will attempt to trigger a leadership contest if she's not impressed by his speech.
Well, Alex Newton is the Deputy Director at More in Common, and he joins us now. Alex, good morning. A fascinating week for pollsters like you. Labour seem to think that a reset, a move towards the EU is what it's going to take to win back those voters that have shifted to reform. Do you agree?
Well, good morning. It's been a really interesting weekend, as you say. We've done quite a lot of work in this area, and we've been looking at Britain's views both on questions about the EU, but also going back to the referendum on Brexit. And there's certainly a group where the country thinks that actually Brexit could have worked if it had been done better. There's a group that thinks that Brexit could still work, and there's a group that does want us to rejoin the European Union. Now, if you look at the Labour coalition in 2024, the group of voters who voted in Keir Starmer, one thing that does unite around 3/4 of them is this idea for closer ties with the European Union. So you can see why Keir Starmer today is trying to think, well, actually, what can I do to try to hold together my coalition? And is thinking that the European Union could be an opportunity there.
Now, Nigel Farage has said that this is the end of left-right politics. Do you think that is what these local election results show?
I think the local election results do show that the era of kind of the two-party dominance of Labour and Conservatives is pretty much over. As pollsters often, we don't want to say things too definitively as predictions, but some of these results are historic and unprecedented. If you look in councils like in Sunderland and Newcastle, these are places that have been Labour for decades. Sunderland has been a Labour council since it was created in the 1970s. It's now pretty much gone to reform. And yet in other places, I think the really interesting thing, if you look at Birmingham, for example, is now it's a split between about 5 parties. And even between the 2 parties, they can't get overall control of the council. So yes, the landscape has shifted. We are not in the landscape we were of the Labour and the Conservatives dominating politics. And all parties are going to have to adjust to that new reality.
And Alex, even though it was a great week and a terrific gains for reform, we cannot conceal, we can't overlook the fact that reform's share of the vote actually was down quite sharply on the local elections the previous year. They were on 27%. I think they were on more like 32% last time, suggesting that perhaps they have peaked.
Yes, there've been some real pluses, but also some potential issues for reform from these elections. I mean, as you touched on there are some cases where reform might be expected to do better. In particular, I suppose in real bellwether seats like Swindon, actually reform haven't done as well as they hoped. And, a seat like Swindon is going to be crucial for any party that's hoping to secure a majority. So for reform, they will look at this and go, actually, there are places where they will feel slightly disappointed. But overall, we shouldn't get away from the fact that it was an incredibly strong night for reform. They did far better than the other parties. And so I don't think we could overplay the negativity and their slight plateauing in the polls recently.
Alex Newton, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I'm really enjoying your podcast, The Opinion Brief, which is a really, really good way of catching up with all the week's opinion polling.
Indeed.
Thank
Good to
you.
talk to you, Alex. Of course, you shouldn't forget that the Tories say they're on the road to recovery, but they went back again last week. There was some high points, but they
There
went
aren't
back.
really any clear winners if you're talking opinion polls.
No,
Big mess. Well,
Reform
anyway.
was the big winner. Prime Minister making his big reset speech, promising sweeping changes. Don't go anywhere. It will be here on GB News.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Looking at the week ahead, it is going to be feeling cool for the time of year. We do have sunny spells today and then more in the way of showers as we head midweek. We have an area of low pressure out there today, though, and this cold front is bringing outbreaks of rain across Wales, the Midlands, the southeast of England, and continuing to break up as it pushes its way southwards. To the north of that, though, plenty of sunny spells across Northern Ireland, much of Scotland, Northern England, and eventually into Wales. It is feeling cool, though, for the time of year, and with this northerly wind along eastern coast, it's going to be feeling particularly cool here. Through Monday evening then, we actually hold on to a good deal of sunshine initially across much of Scotland, so a fine end to the day here. But to the west, we'll start to see the next weather system approaching, bringing some outbreaks of rain across the far west of Scotland. Across Northern Ireland, some late evening sunshine, and that persists across much of southern Scotland into Northern England, Wales and the south. Still some showery outbreaks of rain still possible across the southern parts of England. So through Monday evening, we have the next weather front approaching across Scotland and Northern Ireland. So cloud thickening here, some showery outbreaks of rain. Ahead of that, though, we hold on to the clearest skies across the southwest of England into East Anglia and the southeast. So here it's going to be another chilly night to come. Temperatures falling away. We could see a touch of frost, but milder now across Scotland and Northern Ireland as we start Tuesday morning, given the amount of cloud cover. So a bright but chilly start across the southeast. That cloud will start building as we head into the afternoon with showery outbreaks of rain again across Wales and the Midlands. Behind that, it is a case of sunny spells and frequent showers, but for all of us, still rather cool, but hopefully in the sunshine up to 17 degrees.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Thank you, Britain, for the thousands of you who are becoming friends of GB News each and every week.
Good morning, this is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. Traffic on the M25 clockwise at Junction 6 in Surrey is slowed due to a broken down vehicle causing a 10-minute delay. The M4 eastbound entry slip at Junction 20 is congested, with normal conditions expected between 10:30 and 11:15. Towards Stoke-on-Trent, the A50 eastbound is blocked in 2 of 3 lanes following an accident, causing delays until about 12:30. The M1 northbound is fully closed due to a serious collision until just before 1 this afternoon. And on the trains, there is major disruption on London Overground and South Eastern services, with no trains running via Denmark Hill. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
£76,543 and 21 pence in tax-free cash could be yours this summer. That's totally tax-free cash to spend on anything you like. And remember, because it's totally tax-free cash, you'll get to keep every single penny. For a chance to win, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entry start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB21 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 26th of June. This is a network giveaway. Entries will be pooled. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
no,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 o'clock on Monday, the 11th of May. We are live across the United Kingdom. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
Well, it's the countdown to Sir Keir Starmer delivering that make-or-break speech which could signal the end of his premiership after those disastrous local election results last week.
I think we have to set out the path ahead, and that's what I intend to do in coming days. How we rebuild, how we convince people about hope for the future, and we haven't done enough of that.
Well, the Labour rebellion is growing. Backbench MP Catherine West urges swift action to replace Starmer, and around 40 MPs so far agree with her, but not the Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson.
Fundamentally disagree. You know, I think Catherine is a good colleague and we get on very well, but I think she's just wrong on this point.
And the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, is also in the mix. He's told Downing Street, apparently, he is preparing a case for leadership if a contest is triggered.
Meanwhile, Angela Rayner is backing Andy Burnham. The former Deputy Prime Minister says this is Labour's last chance as she throws her weight behind the Greater Manchester Mayor. Can the Prime Minister hang on?
Last Chance Saloon doesn't begin to cut it. This is the moment for the Prime Minister, speaking in just a few minutes' time. Can he speak like he's never spoken before?
Hello, good morning and welcome. You're watching and listening to Britain's Newsroom. We're live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
This is when you need a great orator. And he's anything but. He's one of the worst public speakers we've ever had in Number 10. Yeah. Theresa May was pretty terrible. Yeah. But he needs a speech of his life. Who's going to write it? Morgan McSweeney, his Chief of Staff, has gone. Yeah. He's on his 4th comms chief since he's been there. Yeah. If he writes it, if it comes from the heart, it's going to be very dull, because it doesn't appear to be much coming out of that.
Well, that's the thing. I think what people like about Nigel Farage and maybe even Zach Polanski is that they speak from their heart. You don't have to agree with what they say, but you can see it's authentic. Kemi Badenoch last week, when she was responding to a protester, just hit back straight away, said exactly what she thinks.
And it went viral.
And it went viral. And it's not about whether or not it's polished, it's about whether or not it's authentic.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Keir Starmer really struggles with. He wants to appear professional, he wants to appear sincere, but often he just appears wooden.
And who'd have thought yesterday 200,000 people outside Downing Street protesting against anti-Semitism, when one of his big selling points when he got in as Prime Minister is he was going to rid the Labour Party of the scourge of anti-Semitism, Jew-hating, if you like, which had reached epidemic levels under Jeremy Corbyn. That Equalities and Human Rights Commission report, which laid bare the extent of it. And when the Labour ministers went to speak, Pat McFadden, he was booed and jeered and left the stage.
Absolutely.
What an extraordinary position. When traditionally the Jewish community voted Labour.
Yes, that's right. What a change. And change is what the Labour Party says it wants to deliver. And all the analysis I've seen so far from the government is people aren't seeing the change they want quick enough. But I would say the reverse is true. People are seeing things get worse. Anti-Semitism, the economy, unemployment, taxation, all these things have got worse under the Labour government. People were fed up with the Conservatives, gave the Conservatives a good kicking. Yeah. But they've ended up with a worse situation under this government. And I think that's what is so frustrating for so many people.
They know that there are people living on benefits and will always be on benefits, and they're sick of it. And some of those people on benefits are on more money than people who are working hard. They know that people are still flooding across the English Channel, illegal migrants. We don't know where they are. We don't know where they're going. We don't know who they are. And then we read just a couple of weeks ago they were going to start taking their phones off them. Like they hadn't thought of that before.
I know.
To see who the people smuggler was, all the information on the mobile phone, and they say they're closing the migrant hotels, but where are they going?
Well, one potential interesting development is that Reform now control 14 more councils than they did last week. Councils have responsibility for housing asylum seekers. What if all those councils refused to house asylum seekers? That would be an interesting development. What would the government do about that?
It would be a great standoff. Well, the government would have to open emergency camps.
In other places, in Labour areas, for example.
Yeah. Or, as Nigel Farage might have said, you Green Party areas, because that was one
more
of
of those now as well.
Yeah. Now, there's some clapping coming in, some standing up. We're in Downing Street, taking you to Downing Street because the Prime Minister... It's not him, no, so perhaps there's going to be a warm-up act. Don't have a warm-up act, because the warm-up act would be better than the Prime Minister. That would be my advice.
Unfortunately, it is true. He really, really struggles to put any kind of passion into speeches. There's a young lady standing there, not sure who she is, but yes, maybe she is the warm-up act. Maybe she's telling everybody where the fire exits are. In case they want to leave in an emergency.
So we will bring the speech to you live as it starts, but we cannot underestimate what's at stake here, because Catherine West, who is a Labour MP, in fact, we can bring Tom Harwood in, who's in Downing Street. Tom, we've got a warm... the warm-up act has started. How long do we think the Prime Minister will speak for?
Yes, and that means that that we're not entirely sure. I would say that it would be a chunky speech, and yet we are hearing that there will not be a significant degree of policy in the speech. It's going to be more values-driven, and that might be a difficulty for a Prime Minister that's trying to set out the course of the coming years, or indeed decade in power that he promised that he would have. Now,
and Tom, can I just say on values, what values were driving him when he appointed the friend of the paedophile pervert, Jeffrey Epstein, when he made Peter Mandelson his ambassador to Washington, despite numerous warnings that the appointment could implode? What sort of values are attached to that appointment?
I mean, that is a significant issue, of course. I mean, this is really the beginning of the undoing of Keir Starmer, someone that was obviously saying that he wasn't particularly saying that he was an individual who was going to be the razzmatazz showman. He was going to be the steady, calm leader. But, however, that steady, calm leadership obviously was undermined when he made a decision that didn't look steady or calm, that didn't meet that level of integrity that he promised he would have. No, it did seem that the Prime Minister, as soon as he made that decision to go with expediency over morality, suddenly he was no longer the moral figure, the whiter-than-white individual that he promised to be.
Tom, thank you very much for that. Well, we are going to go to that conference now, waiting the Prime Minister, but Jane Cotterill, who is a Labour MP... Botterill is currently at the podium.
I'm having to look her up because I've never heard of her. She's a fairly new MP. She got in 2024. We'll have a listen to her.
Feeling as if the state cares more about those trying to take from our country than those trying to contribute to it. That it doesn't care about them. We've got to address that. We must deliver for the left behind towns and cities that have seen industry leave and the institutions that formed their identity go with it. We have the opportunity and the ability to draw a line under this story of decline and division and restore hope and prosperity. And this government has already done so much to set this work in motion. But this can only happen with a Labour Party, governing with Labour values. That's why I'm pleased to introduce the man who delivered the first Labour government in a generation and has fought all his life for justice and fairness, the Prime Minister and the leader of our party, Keir Starmer.
That's great. That's really great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And thank you, Jay. They were such powerful words. Thank you for that introduction. The election results last week were tough. Very tough. We lost some brilliant Labour representatives. That hurts. And it should hurt. I get it. I feel it. And I take responsibility. But it's not just about taking responsibility for the results. It's about taking responsibility to explain how, as a political and electoral force, we will be better and do better in the months and years ahead. Because we are not just facing dangerous times, but dangerous opponents, very dangerous opponents. This hurts not just because Labour has done badly, but because if we don't get this right, our country will go down a very dark path. So just as I take responsibility for the results, I also take responsibility for delivering the change that we promised, for a stronger and fairer Britain that we must build. I take responsibility for navigating us through a world that is more dangerous than at any time in my life. And I take responsibility for not walking away, not plunging our country into chaos as the Tories did time and again, chaos that did lasting damage to this country. A Labour government would never be forgiven for inflicting that on our country again. I know that people are frustrated by the state of Britain, frustrated by politics, and some people frustrated with me. I know I have my doubters, and I know I need to prove them wrong, and I will. So let me start on a personal note. Like every Prime Minister, I've learned a lot in the first 2 years in the job. In terms of the policy challenges that our country faces, incremental change won't cut it. On growth, defence, Europe, energy, we need a bigger response than we anticipated in 2024. Because these are not ordinary times. And this is a political challenge just as much as it's a policy challenge. Delivery is, of course, essential, but it's not sufficient on its own to address the frustration that voters feel. We're battling Reform and the Greens, but at a deeper level, we're battling the despair on which they prey, despair that they exploit and amplify. And so analysis matters, but argument matters more. Evidence matters, but so too does emotion. Stories beat spreadsheets. People need hope. So we will face up to the big challenges, and we will make the big arguments, the Labour case, that only Labour values and Labour policies can ensure our country not only weathers these storms, but emerges stronger and fairer. And the Labour case, that neither Nigel Farage nor Zach Polansky offers our country the serious progressive leadership that these times demand. Of course, like every government, we've made mistakes. But we got the big political choices right. I mean, if we'd listened to the advice of other parties, right now we'd be stuck in a standoff with Iran, having been dragged into a war that is not in our interest, and I will never do that. We have invested in our public services, in people, in the pride of Britain's communities. Difficult decisions funded that. But now, NHS waiting lists are coming down. Child poverty is coming down. Immigration is coming down. And we are rebuilding from the ground up. They were the right calls. And most of all, we stabilised the economy. The fundamentals are sound. And that matters because it puts us in a much better place to come out of the conflict in Iran stronger and fairer, and for living standards to improve after 2 decades of stagnation. But that's not enough, clearly. No. For the British people, tired of a status quo that has failed them, change cannot come quickly enough. And truth be told, I'm not sure that they believe that we care. I'm not sure they believe that we see their lives. That's tough to say. When you come from a working class background like me, it's hard to hear that. Because I do know what it's like to struggle and to strive. But what I take from it is that I've spent too much time talking about what I am doing for working people and not enough time talking about why or who I stand for. Because I can see how hard life has been during these decades of crisis. I can see that very clearly. My late brother Nick spent all his adult life going from one job to the next. The status quo did not work for him. My sister is a carer, working long hours on low pay, year after year after year. She didn't even get sick pay in the pandemic. The status quo did not work for her. For too long, we've ignored people like that. And there are millions of people in that boat, millions of people who don't get the dignity, the respect, the chance that they deserve to go as far as their talent and effort should take them. Millions of people held back because the status quo in this country does not work for them. I am fighting for them. We are fighting for them. I am their Prime Minister and this is their government. Because I know whose side I'm on. I'm on the side of working people just like my sister. People who work harder and harder, but who worry about the cost of living. They're not asking for the world. They just want to do the best for their kids. They want their town centres, the places they care about, to thrive, their public services to work, and people in power to see their problems. And right now, they're worried sick. They turn on the TV, they see bombs falling. They go to the petrol station, see prices rising, and they think, how is this happening to us again? They say, how can I be paying the price for a war thousands of miles away that I don't support, that Britain isn't involved in? And it's not a new feeling, is it? For 2 decades, our country has been buffeted by crisis after crisis. The 2008 financial crash, the Tory austerity that followed it, Brexit, COVID, the Ukraine war, on and on it goes. And the response is always the same. A desperate attempt to get back to the status quo, a status quo that failed working people time and again. Our response this time must be different. A complete break. We must make this country stronger, take control of our economic security, our energy security, our defence security, and we must make this country fairer. Strength through fairness. That is my compass in this world. It is a core Labour argument. And in the coming days, you will see those values writ large in the King's speech. And you will see hope, urgency, and exactly whose side we're on reflected in everything we say and everything we do. So let me give you 3 examples today, starting with British Steel. Because what we did in Scunthorpe last year is one of the proudest things we have done in government. That plant was hours away from closure, and that is thousands of jobs gone, an entire region decimated, Britain's security exposed. And so we acted. Parliament was in recess, but it didn't matter. As a united Labour Party, we passed emergency legislation and we took control. And we must bring that same urgency to everything now, starting, appropriately enough, with Scunthorpe, because steel is the ultimate sovereign capability. Strong nations in a world like this need to make steel. That's why we're backing steel in Port Talbot and across the UK. But in Scunthorpe, we've been negotiating with the current owner, and a commercial sale has not been possible. And now a public interest test could be met. So I can announce that legislation will be brought forward this week to give the government powers, subject to that public interest test, to take full national ownership of British Steel. Public ownership in the public interest. Urgent government on the side of working people, making Britain stronger with the hope of industrial renewal. That is a Labour choice. Second example, Europe. And I'm sorry, but I need to take a bit of a detour on this, because I want to remind you what Nigel Farage said about Brexit. He said it would make us richer. Wrong. It made us poorer. He said it would reduce migration. Wrong. Migration went through the roof. He said it would make us more secure. Wrong again. It made us weaker. He took Britain for a ride, and unlike the Tories, actually, who at least had to face up to it, he just fled the scene. And now he'll talk about almost anything other than the consequences of the one policy he actually delivered. Because he's not just a grifter, he is a chancer. And so at the next EU summit, I will set a new direction for Britain. The last government was defined by breaking our relationship with Europe. This Labour government will be defined by rebuilding our relationship with Europe, by putting Britain at the heart of Europe, so that we are stronger on the economy, stronger on trade, stronger on defence, you name it. Because standing shoulder to shoulder with the countries that most share our interests, our values, and our enemies, that is the right choice for Britain. That is the Labour choice. And for our young people, also something more. Because Brexit snatched away their ability to work, to study, and to live easily in Europe. That's why I'm proud we restored the Erasmus scheme. But I want to go further. I want to make a better offer for our young people. Restore that hope, that freedom, that sense of possibility. And so I want an ambitious youth experience scheme to be at the heart of our new arrangement with the EU, so that our young people can work, can study and live in Europe, a symbol of a stronger relationship and a fairer future with our closest allies. That is the Labour choice. And third, the greatest hope. The hope that every parent has of a better future for their children. And I want parents to feel that that is shared by their government. Now, my parent, don't worry, I'm not going there, but they didn't have a lot of money. And my mum was seriously ill for almost all of her life. But when they were in their later years, reflecting on what gave their life meaning, I could see that, as well as their hope in us, their kids, what comforted them was the idea that they had contributed to a Britain that was getting better for young people, that kids now had a better opportunity than they did. And so I have always been driven by the idea that every child should go as far as their talent or effort takes them. It's a beautiful idea, shared widely across this country. We tell ourselves stories about it, don't we? Stories, not unlike mine, about the working class kids who do make it. And I don't blame people for telling those stories. It's important to tell those stories. But it's not everyone, is it? So when I say every child should have the opportunity to go as far as their talent or effort takes them, I mean every child. I mean the kids who are growing up in poverty, the kids who have special educational needs, the kids who can't get a job, and the kids who are ignored, frankly, because society often only puts those who go to university on a pedestal. We don't really see anything else as success. And that is our investment in apprenticeships, in technical excellence colleges, in special educational needs. We will make sure that every young person struggling to find a job will get a guaranteed offer of a job, training or work placement. And we will go much further with our Pride in Place programme. Back the millions of people who give their time and their effort to young people in their community. We will back them, not just with money, but with power. And we will make sure that kids whose talent lies with their hands, kids who go to college, kids ignored by the status quo, because politicians' kids don't go there, they will finally get the respect that they deserve in a stronger, fairer Britain. That is the Labour choice. These are just a few examples, but they show the urgency in hope in our direction. They show the Labour values we will be guided for. And they show, frankly, the lessons that we will learn. Now, other parties will draw different lessons. In fact, they already are. They want more grievance politics, more division, more pointing at Britain's problems, looking not for solutions, but for someone to blame. Now, that's fine if it's me, if it's politicians, that's the job. But increasingly, it's not. It's other people in this country. And I don't think that's British. That is not the decency and respect that we are known for. But it's here. That politics is with us now. And you'll see it again on Saturday at a march designed to confront and intimidate this diversity and this diverse country. That is why this Labour government will block far-right agitators from travelling to Britain for that event. Because we will not allow people to come to the UK, to threaten our communities and spread hate on our streets. This is nothing less than a battle for the soul of our nation. And I want to be crystal clear about how we will win it. Because we cannot win as a weaker version of Reform or the Greens. We can only win as a stronger version of Labour, a mainstream party of power, not protest. And I also want to be really clear on this, because I will never stop fighting for the decent, respectful, diverse country that I love. I will never give up on the hope we can unlock in this country, the hope of renters for security in their home, of workers for fairness at work, of public services freed from austerity, the hope of European solidarity, of community pride, of the people who paint over the graffiti that is racist, a country taking control of its future, our spirit unchanged, our resolve unbroken, the hope of a country that can and will become a stronger, fairer Britain. That is the hope I'm fighting for. That is the hope we are fighting for. That is the Labour choice. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm now going to take some questions from the media, and I'm starting with Chris Mason. Chris.
Thank you. Chris Mason, BBC News. Prime Minister, do you think in your gut what you have said is enough this morning? And what do you say directly to those of your colleagues who are weighing up right now whether to back you or to suggest that you should go? And if I may, would you back continuing to block Andy Burnham from trying to return to Parliament?
Well, Chris, there's a lot packed into that question. Let me just... What I'm doing is setting out the response, the direction that we need to take, and the acknowledgement that in the world we live in now, we need a bigger response than 2024. It is a different world, and an acknowledgement that this isn't the first shock the country's been through with the Iran conflict. We've had plenty of those in the last 20 years, but every time the government of the day has tried to get back to a status quo that doesn't work. And we're not going to do that this time. That is the urgent task facing our country. We were elected into office to change this country, to bring about the change that is needed. The frustration that has been spoken about is a frustration of at least 20 years, if not more. That is what we're charged with changing. That is what we will change. In relation to Andy Burnham, obviously, any future decision is for the NEC. Andy's doing a great job as mayor in Manchester. And I actually work really well with Andy, and I'll give you two examples. On Northern Powerhouse Rail, which is really important for the North West, we are working together on that project. But equally, we've stood together to support Manchester, the community, when we had the terrible attack on a synagogue last year. Andy was the first person I phoned, and I went straight to Manchester to work with him on our response. So we work very well together, but the actual decision will be one for the NEC. Thank you, Chris, very much. Beth, from Sky News.
Thank you. Prime Minister, back in 2021, when Labour lost hundreds of council seats in the Hartlepool by-election, you thought about resigning as a Labour leader, explaining, this is quoting you, "I didn't feel I should be bigger than the party." But these results, this moment, is so much worse than then. You've lost nearly 1,500 councillors, 40 councils, you've lost Wales. Haven't you, for one moment, thought you should step aside in the interests of the party and country? And if you haven't, why haven't you? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Beth. I think what we witnessed with the last government was the chaos of constantly changing leaders. And it cost this country a huge amount. A huge amount. And I'll tell you who paid the price. It was working people. They paid the price of this. They are still paying the price of this. A Labour government will not inflict that on our country again. We were elected with a mandate to change this country because of what had gone before. And that is what we will do. Yes, I acknowledge the frustration. Yes, I acknowledge the results are tough. Yes, I acknowledge that we've lost brilliant representatives across the United Kingdom. And I have a responsibility for that. But I also have a responsibility to deliver the change that we were elected and that we promised this country. And I'll deliver on that. Thank you very much, Beth.
I think it's a rock, and we talk everything through together, as you know. Robert Peston from ITV.
Prime Minister, these were arguably the worst election results for Labour in 100 years. And, you know, I spent all weekend, as you'd expect, talking to your MPs and ministers, and, you know, most of them said to me that they do think your time is up. So what would persuade you that you're not the best person for this job? And just on this issue of this is no longer the time for incremental change, when you were elected, we'd had 15 years of no growth. We'd had Putin's war that led to the worst energy spike in history. Many would say Brexit had failed. Why didn't you get it then?
Well, Robert, look, I'm not going to shy away from the fact that I've got some doubters, including in my own party. And I'm not going to shy away from the fact that I have to prove them wrong, and I will. I had my doubters when I took on the Labour Party. I had my doubters who said we couldn't change this party and make it capable of winning an election. And I proved them wrong. And when we did that, I had my doubters who said, you can't lead us to a general election victory after the loss in 2019. It was so bad. It's not possible. And I proved them wrong. And I'm going to prove them wrong again here. I also feel a deep sense of personal responsibility to deliver on the mandate that we won at that 2024 election. The first Labour government for 14 years that had to come in and clear up the mess and build a better Britain. That is what I came into politics to do, and that is what I will deliver. Thank you very much. And Robert, the second, on the incremental. Look, you heard what I said about Scunthorpe. This is an example of the urgency and the pace and the type of decisions that we need to make. The same with Europe. A bigger response, a bigger argument that has been made before, because we're living in different times. The Iran war comes on top of all the other crises we've faced for 20 years. We have to learn the lesson. Every single time in the past, we've simply tried to get back as quickly as possible to a status quo that didn't work. We can't do the same again. That's why we need a bigger response. Thank you very much, Robert. I've got Catherine Foster from GB News. Catherine.
Thank you, Catherine Foster, GB News. Prime Minister, the Labour Party was founded to represent the working class, many of whom voted for Brexit because they felt left behind. You've said yourself that the status quo is not working, but you're standing here in London and you're promising more Europe. You lost so much of your core vote in the Red Wall, in Wales, in Scotland, because working class communities feel that the Labour Party has abandoned them and that you don't get it. Are they wrong?
Well, Catherine, thank you very much. On Brexit, the reason I reminded everyone what Nigel Farage said is because that was the promise he put to the country. That we'd be stronger, we'd be richer, we'd have lots of money for the NHS, immigration would come down, and it all proved to be false. And he doesn't take any responsibility. He's not going back to the country now saying it was a good thing, you've all benefited. He'll talk about almost anything else apart from the consequences of the one thing that he delivered for the country, Brexit. He doesn't want to talk about that. And there's a reason for that. It didn't help working people. It turned out what he said wasn't true. And that's why he doesn't want to talk about it now. But we have to talk about it now, because we have to address the situation we're in. We have to give this country a stronger economy, a stronger defence and security set of arrangements, given the world we are living in. And that's why I said what I've said about being closer to Europe, and this government being defined by bringing Europe back together again and Britain at the heart of Europe. Thank you very much, Catherine. I've got Pippa from The Guardian. Pippa.
Prime Minister, I've got a specific question for you and a wider one, if I may. The specific one is, if one of your MPs launches a contest, a leadership bid against you, will you fight it? And the wider one is, do you think that Britain is ungovernable? And if so, why? And who's to blame? The media, your MPs, the government, you? Thank you.
Yes and no. No, I'm not going to walk away in relation to the first part of your question for the reasons I've set out. And no, I don't think Britain is ungovernable. On the contrary, one of the things that I draw great strength from is all the millions of people who care passionately about their place, their community, where they live, where they work. The millions of people who give hours and hours and hours of their time for their community, volunteering, helping others, running teams, you name it. That is a great strength of our country. I draw strength from the fact that we are a reasonable, tolerant, decent country, a live and let live country, a diverse country. That is the real Britain. That's not an ungovernable Britain. That is the Britain that I will fight for, particularly in light of the opponents we now have politically, different to the opponents that we had before. That is the real Britain. That is the Britain I love. That's the Britain I'll fight for. Thank you, Pippa. Jim Pickard from the FT. Jim.
Jim Pickard, FT. Prime Minister, you say you don't want incremental change, and you say you want Britain to be at the heart of Europe. Are you ruling out, however, Labour manifesto at the next general election, including single market or custom union membership? Because without either of those things, our economy is very much not in the heart of Europe.
Yeah, well, Jim, what I want to do is take a big leap forward with the EU-UK summit this year and take us closer, both on trade, the economy, defence and security. And that will then be a platform on which we can build as we go forward. And as we do that, I strongly believe we've got to turn our back on the arguments of the past, not open old grievances, make this country fairer. And so that's the approach that I will take. I've got Audrey from The Times. Audrey.
Good morning, Prime Minister. Aubrey Allegretti from The Times. To follow up on a previous question, you said that whether Andy Burnham comes back to Parliament is a matter for the NEC. Your business secretary said as much this morning, but he also said that it would be a distraction and that Labour shouldn't be fighting unnecessarily elections. Do you agree with him? Do you think Labour can afford to have 2 by-elections in Greater Manchester for the mayoralty and wherever Andy Burnham returns? And also, if I may, over the weekend, I think you gave an interview in which you suggested that you would like to be Prime Minister for a full 10 years. Some Labour MPs have been unhappy with those comments. Do you still stand by them?
Well, on Andy Burnham, my answer, Aubrey, is the same. That will be a matter for the National Executive Committee if and when the issue arises. But just to be really clear, on a personal level, I've worked very closely with Andy in our respective roles now. The first person I worked for when I came to Parliament was Andy. He wanted me in his team in the Shadow Home Office. I wanted to be in his team in the Shadow Home Office. So we work very well together. We'll continue to work very well together. If the issue arises, it'll be a matter for the NEC. On the decade, look, what I'm doing is spelling out the scale of the challenge that we face. It's the same argument I was making before the election, which is after the damage of the last government, it will take time to clear that damage up and to build the better, stronger country that we need. And that's the decade that I've been talking about. Look, do I recognise that we've got to turn this around? Yes, of course I do. Do I realise that we've got to respond to these elections in the way I've set out in the speech I gave a moment to? Yes, of course I do. And what I've done today is set out how I intend to address that task. Thank you very much, Aubrey. I've got Sophie from the Mirror.
Hi, Sophie Huskisson from the Mirror. Thank you, Prime Minister. So do you agree with Angela Rayner that this could be your last chance to change course and save the Labour Party's future? And do you think the party should move more to the left to become, as you put it, a stronger version of Labour? And if I can just ask as well, since the losses in Wales and Scotland, have you spoken to Eluned Morgan and Anas Sarwar, and what was said? Thank you.
Let me take them in reverse order. I've spoken to both Eluned and Anas. I'm not going to go through the conversation, but I have spoken to them, as I've spoken to many of those brilliant representatives who didn't get elected this time, and to council leaders across the country. I've spent a good deal of the weekend having those calls, but those calls did include Eluned and Anas. In relation to the task of turning this around, look, I do understand the enormity of the task that we face. We inherited a terrible legacy from the last government. Economically, public services, the NHS on its knees. And what we found when we got into government was even worse than we feared. And one of the mistakes I think we made was we wanted to level with the country about how bad things were. But we didn't convince people enough in that early period of the change that we would bring about and why their lives would be better. And that's why we have to change that and inject much more hope and optimism into what we are saying. And so I think Angela and I agree, and I've spoken to Angela as well, by the way, so I know exactly what her thinking is in relation to this. Thank you very much. I've got Jack from The Sun.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Jack from The Sun, just on that point, when you did speak to Angela Rayner, did she rule out ever launching a leadership challenge against you? And also, you said in your speech just now that if you were ousted as Labour leader, it would plunge the country into chaos. Some of your critics say your government is already mired in chaos, but can you be clear about what you mean? Are you saying that because it is you with the mandate, if you were ousted, there would have to be a general election?
Well, Jack's a lot bound up with that. I did speak to Angela. I'm afraid I'm going to disappoint you by not going. I've spoken to Angela many, many times, by the way, in the last few weeks. We are friends. We get on very well. But I'm not going to go through each and everything that we discussed in those calls. But on this question of chaos, look, the question whether if a government constantly changes its leadership, the question whether that damages the country is not an academic question. It's not something that you study at university and go through various theories. We tested it. We tested it to destruction under the last government, and it inflicted huge damage on this country. A Labour government will never be forgiven if we repeat that and inflict that on the country. And that's what I mean when I say I'm not going to plunge this country into chaos. Jason from the Mail.
Thanks, PM. That was a heartfelt speech. Your own MPs, though, at the end of last week were saying that you were detested on the doorstep. Those are their words. They said that people are no longer listening to you and that it doesn't matter how many heartfelt speeches you make, your unpopularity is dragging this government down. In those circumstances, don't you owe it to them to step aside and give someone else a go at keeping these forces of darkness at bay?
Well, look, I acknowledged, Jason, a moment ago, there is frustration across the country that at the status quo, which isn't working. There's frustration that politics is not working for too many people. And yes, there is some frustration with me, I acknowledge that. But that frustration that I'm describing has been built up over many, many years by people who feel that their lives are not getting better, that their city centre, their town centre, the place where they live doesn't look any better for them, that their children aren't going to get better chances than they got. That is what's driving that frustration. That is deep, that is political, that is the challenge we have to rise to. I mean, it's not a frustration that can be just cast aside easily. It's deeply bound in the status quo that has failed for so many years, and that's why we have to turn that around. And I've got Bethan McGinley.
Hi.
Bethan.
Hi. So you've talked a lot today about giving young people hope again, but for many young Britons, things like home ownership, secure work and financial stability still feel further away than it did for previous generations. Why should they believe that this government can reverse that?
Well, I think it's such a good question because I think young people have been very badly let down, whether that's on opportunities at work. We've got the best part of 1 million people, young people not in work. That's going to have a huge impact on them for the rest of their lives. People who can't get on the housing ladder very quickly or at all. And we have to instill the hope in them. We do that by changing what we're doing to help people get into work. We do that by taking better protections for renters. Too many young people are spending a lot of their income on rent, therefore they can't save their money to pay for a deposit. We're changing that with the Renters' Rights Act, which came into force just a week and a bit ago. And we're changing that with the hope of a better future and the sense in which they will be able to work, travel and study in Europe in a way which hasn't been possible in recent years. And in the end, those young people are our hope, because that's why I gave the example of my mum and dad, and it's a very real example because I think very many people, when they get towards the end of their lives, do reflect and say, what was my life about? And for my mum and dad, in material things, they didn't actually have a lot to show for their lives, but they had this deep comfort. I could really feel it, this deep comfort inside, that they, my mum and dad, Rod and Joe, that they had contributed to a country where the next generation would have better chances. That is the real hope and optimism in young people, and that's where it resides with me, because I think, as I said in the speech, that's the greatest hope of all. So thank you very much for that question. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Well, did he do enough to save his political career? Let's ask Matthew Talbot, former Labour man.
Keir Starmer was elected 6 years ago last month, and that is the most passion I've ever seen him give.
Right.
He shouldn't have taken until now. The thing that frustrates me is we heard further and faster at the last local elections. We've got to go further and faster on what we're told to do. Then at the weekend we heard we've got to go further and faster, and you wonder how fast we must be going at this point for it to be happening. He's giving a speech that you would give in opposition, but he's in power. He's blaming everything from the past, and we will change it, and we will change it. I know things don't change overnight. You've had 2 years. And we've been preparing people, oh, it's going to be doom and gloom, it's going to get better before, it's going to get worse before it gets better. And I just think I'm out of energy with it, really, because this isn't, you know, it's a sad day for the Labour Party. It's a terrible day for the country. There were 9.7 million people that went to the ballot box at the last election to vote for Labour, not even necessarily voting for Labour, voting against the Tories.
In 2024?
Yeah, and against you know, the last 14 years that they were hoping that there would be change, something would be different. There's nothing about making work pay. We had one mention of immigration, which is, other than Keir Starmer, the thing that comes up on the doorsteps the most. We had the Iraq War 5 times because they think that's their calling card. They nationalised these local elections by saying Keir Starmer stood up to Donald Trump. Well, is there an expectation Donald Trump would go out and take the bins out and fill the potholes then? Because that wasn't what those local elections were supposed to be about. So, I mean, listen, he can hobble on for a bit, but I said last year, it's time for a Joe Biden-like conversation. You are not going to win the next general election.
Does he get through this week? My pitch has always been that he'll probably limp on to the party conference season when the trade unions are there, the Labour membership is there, and there'll have been a torrid summer. Nothing would have changed.
Sorry, without hedging me bets, it'll be one or the other. We will either see movement very quickly after Wednesday, but people won't want to upset the King's speech.
Yeah.
Or it'll be conference, and, you know... he says talking about chaos. We're in chaos. And actually, I want to push back on the idea that changing leaders is bad. I don't think you should be doing it as much as we have done. Theresa May let Boris Johnson in, and they won the next election. What the Tories kept doing is they were doing it to save the party. This should be about saving the country and giving the country what we need, a new social contract.
Well, I think that's unfair on the Tories. I think Boris Johnson came in to rescue Brexit, which had been voted for by the public, and Theresa May was trying to undermine that. But, I mean, this was a speech. It was dull. If that's the most passion he can muster, well, I mean, it's like he carries on being some kind of robot. We got all the bingo words in there. We had working people, we had his parents, we had...
working class in under 10 minutes.
Indeed.
We should have done a sweep on it in the office, because I'd have gone for 7.5 and I'd have been very close.
I think you would have won, Andrew. We got 14 years, we got an attack on Farage, and we got basically nothing new, except for he wants to take us further into the EU, and he clearly can't read a map, because literally last Thursday, the country voted against Labour in the areas that had voted for Brexit. He's not reading the room, he's not got a grip on his party, and he's not running the country.
Well, panel, we'll turn to you shortly.
Yeah, because we're going to go to Downing Street. Tom Harwood's there, our Deputy Political Editor. What do you make of it, Tom?
This was the speech that Keir Starmer had to deliver. You'll have noticed in the audience there were some very enthusiastic supporters of his, clapping almost every other sentence. It reminded me of Ian Duncan Smith in 2003 when he had to give the speech of his life at Conservative Party conference. He was removed as party leader several months later. It did strike me as strange that you had so many people so vociferously applauding every single line, maybe not even the lines that were designed to be applause lines, and at one moment heckling the question from ITV's Robert Peston. The Prime Minister himself had to step in and tell his clappers in the audience, please, no, let's listen. That seemed to be, there was a bit of over-enthusiasm, and maybe that is telling because it was so enthusiastic for him. How will it have landed amongst the people that matter? The 400 plus Labour members of Parliament, and indeed maybe for the wider country too. Well, we had heard everything in that speech before. It was a rehash of some of a speech that we heard at a Labour Party conference about a year and a half ago, the story of his family, his pebble-dashed home growing up, and also policy that we've heard before, nationalising the Scunthorpe steelworks and stepping closer to Europe, although interestingly, not rejoining the single market or customs union. It feels like this halfway house might not go far enough for either side. Keir Starmer standing in the middle of the road there, and that has the risk of being hit by traffic on both sides.
Fascinating.
Tom Harwood, outside 10 Downing Street, thank you very much for that report. Well, joining us now is the Labour MP for Rugby, John Slinger. John, good morning. Do you think the Prime Minister has done enough to save his skin?
Absolutely. He's certainly done enough. You saw today the man, you saw the person, the passion, you saw the plan as well. And I was actually inspired by what he said. And I understand it. People want to, take cheap shots at him. He because he didn't deliver, a JFK speech. He somehow hasn't landed, quite the kind of tour de force that you were expecting. But I was inspired by what he said. You saw there a Prime Minister who has set out the vision for this country, and he set out also his values as well. You saw more about his more from him, the man, the person, where he comes from, and all this claptrap you hear about this guy being out of touch and some kind of member of the elite, and yet the guy who is often lauded on this channel and others is a guy who, let's just run through his background. Privately educated, became a commodities trader in the City of London, was given a £5 million donation by a crypto billionaire residing overseas, has earned on average about £1 million a year in addition to his role as an MP, a representative of the people. And yet we are told that this is a guy who is the tribune of the working class. It's absolutely ridiculous.
But
what you saw today was a Prime Minister.
Sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Slinger, but clearly an awful lot of the population agree that Nigel Farage is the great hope for the working class, because that's exactly what we saw on Thursday in large swathes of working class Britain switching their vote from Labour to Reform. And yet your Prime Minister has just called out that party as dangerous.
Well, look, I think what is dangerous in politics is where politicians, whether they are from the right or from the left, wherever they're from, and we're seeing it now from Zach Polanski's populist Greens as well, where what they do is they look at the frustration, very legitimate frustration of the British people, not just about this government, but about the previous government and ones before that probably as well. They take that frustration and they weaponize it and they turn it into anger, and then they direct that anger. In the case of Mr. Farage and his party, they point upwards at some bizarre elite, even though they are well and truly, as I've just demonstrated, part of the elite. And then they direct their anger at minorities and vulnerable groups and tell the British public that somehow the way we can resolve our problems is by targeting those minorities.
This is just
and that's an absolute travesty.
People have voted against
to answer your
higher
question,
immigration for election after election after election. And every single government of both colours has failed to deliver that. That's not unjustified frustration.
Immigration is down. This government has deported tens of thousands of people who don't deserve to be here.
We know all that, Mr. Slinger. Mr. Slinger,
we should do that.
Mr. Slinger, we
what I'm
know
saying
that.
Is you're talking about
most of those are people who'd overstayed their
visas.
Most of those are people who'd overstayed their visas. You've not got to grips with what's going on in the Channel. Are you seriously suggesting that speech your Prime Minister just made this morning would have made a jot of difference to the outcome of those local elections last week?
The outcome of local elections is something that happens to incumbent governments. They are almost
worst results
always
in your
given
history.
a kicking.
The worst
They
results
are
in your
very-
history.
Look, I'm not coming on here to sugarcoat it. It was
You
a
are.
really
You're trying to.
result. No, I'm not. Well, actually, if you let me explain, I'm not actually. I'm accepting that they were very bad results. I'm accepting that the Prime Minister, as the leader, the head honcho, the leader of our party, has to take responsibility. Which, if your viewers were listening, which they were, they will have heard him say, "I take responsibility." He leads the team, and it is much wider than just the Prime Minister. Everyone in the Labour government, everyone in the Parliamentary Labour Party and the wider movement needs to take responsibility as well for getting on with the day job. And what you saw
Mr. Stenger,
today...
I'm so sorry to interrupt. We are going to have to leave it there. I'm sorry to interrupt, and thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. It's not an easy gig.
Yeah, very pleased.
No problem. I enjoy it.
Time is 11. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Yes, you're watching Britain's Newsroom. It's 11 o'clock on Monday, the 11th of May. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
So,
take responsibility for not walking away, not plunging our country into chaos as the Tories did time and again.
So that's our Prime Minister vowing to stay in power, take responsibility, saying Labour will never be forgiven for holding a leadership contest right now. The PM fought back and he took several swipes at Nigel Farage's Reform UK.
We are not just facing dangerous times, but dangerous opponents, very dangerous opponents. This hurts not just because Labour has done badly, but because if we don't get this right, our country will go down a very dark path.
And Sir Keir Starmer also set out his plan for Britain.
Legislation will be brought forward this week to give the government powers, subject to that public interest test, to take full national ownership of British Steel. This Labour government will be defined by rebuilding our relationship with Europe, by putting Britain at the heart of Europe. And so I want an ambitious youth experience scheme to be at the heart of our new arrangement with the EU.
Well, the Prime Minister was cheered to the rafters in this room in London, but will it be enough to prevent MPs from deciding that they need to get rid of him? I asked him a question about whether Labour have abandoned the working class. Clearly, many communities feel that they have, but he went on to a long rant about Nigel Farage and Brexit. I will bring you more details shortly.
Well, the Prime Minister's not the only person talking about change today. Here in Havering, the people want to see change as well. But can Reform UK deliver that? It's their first London council. I'll be finding out throughout the morning.
Yorkshire has become almost a reform county in places in the region where local elections were held. We're here in Barnsley. It's been controlled by Labour for 50 years since the council began, but now it's gone turquoise, it's gone to reform. We'll be speaking to one of the new councillors shortly and getting reaction from people who live there about the change in leadership.
Hello, good morning and welcome. You're watching and listening to Britain's Newsroom. We're live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
So he's come out fighting. He takes full responsibility for last week's local election wipeout.
I will set a new direction for Britain. The last government was defined by breaking our relationship with Europe. This Labour government will be defined by rebuilding our relationship with Europe, by putting Britain at the heart of Europe, so that we are stronger on the economy, stronger on trade, stronger on defence, you name it. Because standing shoulder to shoulder with the countries that most share our interests, our values and our enemies, that is the right choice for Britain. That is the Labour choice.
Well, the Prime Minister placed a renewed focus on strengthening ties with the European Union as he pledged to nationalise British Steel in a bid to overturn public opinion.
Well, let's speak to GB News chief political correspondent Catherine Forster, who was there and, in fact, asked the Prime Minister a question. Don't you think is it too kindly to your question, Catherine, perhaps?
Well, he didn't answer my question, but we'll come to that in a minute. He got a lot of cheers here with clearly a hand-picked crowd of supporters and the press who obviously were not cheering at all. And his central message is, I get it, incremental steps are not enough. The status quo is broken and we're going to bring change. Big cheers for nationalising British Steel. I think that will be a popular move. But more opportunities for young people, apprenticeships and so on. Well, we know that those have been we haven't had enough of those. We hear the talk, but when does it actually happen? But so much of this too about Europe, saying that Brexit had made us poorer, saying that Nigel Farage had missold it, calling him a grifter and a chancer. But I asked a question to the Prime Minister. Let's have a look now at what I asked him and just listen to what he said in response.
Prime Minister, the Labour Party was founded to represent the working class, many of whom voted for Brexit because they felt left behind. You've said yourself that the status quo is not working, but you're standing here in London and you're promising more wall in Wales, in Scotland, because working class communities feel that the Labour Party has abandoned them and that you don't get it. Are they wrong?
Well, Catherine, thank you very much. On Brexit, the reason I reminded everyone what Nigel Farage said is because that was the promise he put to the country. That we'd be stronger, we'd be richer, we'd have lots of money for the NHS, immigration would come down, and it all proved to be false. And he doesn't take any responsibility. He's not going back to the country now saying it was a good thing, you've all benefited. He'll talk about almost anything else apart from the consequences of the one thing that he delivered for the country, Brexit. He doesn't want to talk about that, and there's a reason for that. It didn't help working people. It turned out what he said wasn't true. And that's why he doesn't want to talk about it now. But we have to talk about it now, because we have to address the situation we're in. We have to give this country a stronger economy, a stronger defence and security set of arrangements, given the world we are living in. And that's why I said what I've said about being closer to Europe, and this government being defined by bringing Europe back together again and Britain at the heart of Europe. Thank you very much, Catherine.
So you will have noticed there that I asked him if Labour had abandoned the working class, and the answer he gave was all about Brexit and Nigel Farage and how bad it had been for the country, which was not what I was asking about. And I think there is a real fundamental problem, because when you look at the map, the working class communities in Wales, in Scotland, in the Red Wall, in Manchester, in Bradford, in so many places that did not vote Labour, having voted Labour for decades because they feel that the Labour Party is no longer for them. One of the most striking things that the Prime Minister said at one point, he said, I'm not sure that they believe that we care. Now, that's a major problem, isn't it? Because if they didn't believe that the Labour Party cared under the first 2 years of Sir Keir Starmer, why would they now believe that the Labour Party cares? Of course, what this is all about at the moment is the Prime Minister trying to stay in office. We know 40 MPs want him out. We know that Catherine West, backbench MP, is listening to the speech and going to make a decision whether she presses the button on a leadership challenge which could unleash Wes Streeting and others to run for the leadership too. Has this speech done enough? We will find out in the coming hours. My suspicion is that it may have done enough to hold off a leadership challenge now, but that would probably only be because there's lots of people who want the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, to take the job of Prime Minister, and that cannot happen until he gets a seat. But my goodness, the next few hours could be pretty febrile.
And Forster, our chief political correspondent in Downing Street. Well, it was a big, big moment, and delighted to say Graham Davis is with us, who is you've coached so many politicians over the years, Graham, on how to deliver a speech. Do you think the Prime Minister might have been more appropriately dressed?
Well, overall...
Jacket and tie might have helped. He doesn't sound like a Prime Minister. Now he doesn't look like one.
It was a remarkable barrage of blandness and a cacophony of cliches. And indeed, even his appearance was a cliche.
Yeah.
The old jacket off, sleeves rolled up, no tie. But of course, he didn't have to worry about producing an Amazon under his armpits like Tony Blair famously did when he did a major speech with his jacket off, because Keir Starmer never produces that amount of emotion under pressure, so he doesn't produce sweat either.
No. Would you rate it into... because we had Matthew Talbot on earlier, who's been a Labour Party man for years, saying probably the most emotion he's ever seen him convey and display. I mean, how would you rate it?
He only has one pace, one tone of voice, one facial expression. He's more wooden than Sherwood Forest. And even if he'd come onto stage with the backing track of the opening chords of the final countdown, with dry ice and laser beams, wearing Joseph's amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, he still couldn't have produced an adrenalised political cabaret performance that he needed. Although, to be fair, he is more compelling than many Daleks I've seen.
And Graham, because a lot of people say in the modern world of social media and short clips and sound bites, we don't really need orators anymore. But nevertheless, when you do hear people who are fantastic communicators, it does transmit a kind of level of leadership and authority that Keir Starmer just doesn't have.
He tried to convey his leadership by having what he felt was a striking micro-message throughout the speech: strength through fairness. But it was more like weakness through blindness. He kept on talking about the need to attack the status quo while forgetting that he is the status quo.
Yeah.
There are no crowds marching down Whitehall chanting, "What do we want? Nationalisation and more apprenticeships." He really, not only does he not read the room, he can't seem to read anything. And he did try to drop a sort of nuke in the middle of the speech, a nuke from which the blast will probably go all over him. He wanted to put Britain at the heart of Europe again. Attacking the status quo should not mean betraying the biggest democratic vote that this country has ever seen. He says it's the Labour choice. Well, I believe it's not the people's choice. It's only Keir Starmer's choice.
And it is extraordinary. We were talking about this earlier. If you look at the map, electoral map of Britain last week, the places that voted heavily for Brexit massively voted for reform last week, and threw out Labour councillors from... In Sunderland, I think they lost 48 councillors. Barnsley, an area you know quite well, Miriam. It'd been Labour for 50 years, 100 years. Reform stronghold.
One of the things he lacks is sensitivity to his circumstances. When people are under extreme pressure, they often revert to type rather than seeing what's happening around them. He has reverted to the type of being a criminal barrister, defending somebody who's in the dock, who he sees as being unfairly accused of murdering the country. I've been there a few times myself in Snaresbrook Crown Court. And he thinks that everything could be repaired by one thunder flash speech, despite the fact that all the evidence has been disastrous. The other barristers in the room want to cut his throat, and the judge is impatiently glancing at the clock, wanting to get things over with as quickly as possible.
How much difference could a better communicator make? Even if Labour were not to change its policy platform substantially, let's imagine that they did replace Keir Starmer with somebody like Andy Burnham or Wes Streeting, both of whom are much more charismatic communicators. Do you think that could be enough to persuade people to give Labour another chance?
Well, looking at those two individual candidates, as far as Keir Starmer's concerned, Andy Burnham, the king in the north, he's not the Messiah, he's just another very naughty boy. He looks better than Keir Starmer on camera, but inevitably any Burnham regime would involve a lurch to the left. Wes Streeting comes across as one of the senior prefects who hasn't quite got the nerve to put his head above the parapet and challenge the headmaster, but has made it clear he will do so if someone else has the cojones to do it.
But the thing about Wes Streeting is he does come across much more authentic. He speaks from the heart. He has a joke. He's willing to engage with different opinions quite authentically. That's something that Keir Starmer just never does.
I once saw Wes Streeting on television being interviewed by another TV station, and he was asked, can you remind us, what are Keir Starmer's 5 core principles? And Streeting thought for a moment, and he said, well, yes, there's a 5. And the interviewer said, yeah, number 5. And then Streeting said, you've got me there. Well done. I'm bound to be sacked in the morning. Bravo to you. So he occasionally not only has a sense of humour, but just a hint of self-parody, which could be a dangerous weapon for the next Prime Minister.
Yeah. If you were a betting man on that speech, let's ask you, if you, as a speech commentator, speech coach, what mark out of 10 do you give that speech?
I'm going to go straight to your betting suggestion. Right. Can I say that I have a perfect record when it comes to political predictions?
Right.
Every prediction that I make turns out to be 100% wrong. Right. So whatever I say in the next 30 seconds, you should go down to Paddy Power and absolutely bet your life on the opposite. I would suggest it was a good solid 5.5, 6 out of 10, but he's not going anywhere, and for at least the next 18 months he will still be Prime Minister.
18 months, wow.
I certainly think he's there for months rather than days.
We shall
Graham,
see.
always a joy to see you.
Thank you so much.
Graham Davis. Now, we're going to go out to Yorkshire because Anna Riley joins us there now in a new reform stronghold.
Good morning, Andrew and Miriam. Yes, and welcome to Barnsley, which has gone turquoise, just like most counties in Yorkshire, where a full all-out election was held in these local elections. They've turned to reform. Here in Barnsley, it was held by Labour for 50 years, held by Labour since the council began, but it's now gone to reform. I'm joined by Luke Wheat. He's one of the new reform councillors for the North Ward. Luke, congratulations. Why do you think it is that reform have swept the area here?
Well, a lot of people are feeling very disenfranchised at the moment. So the Labour Party, they're coming in and they're failing us in massive ways, in both a national level and on a local level. And what that has done is it's drive people to think, I need that other option. One of the things that we've got in Barnsley is a massive amount of spending being spent right here in the town centre, while outlying boroughs like mine in Dearn are being left and neglected, where services are failing and the roads are failing.
Yeah, so what are you going to do then when you get in office? What are going to be your steps to improve the area?
So for us as a team, we've got a really enthusiastic, really skilled team in place. We want to look at the accounts. We want to know, can we afford to be able to go out there and actually do what we want to do? The second thing we want to do is we want to look at innovative ideas. We want to look at, for example, what they put in place with Nottingham for the potholing system with JCB. A British company right there doing a fantastic job, improving the process, and we want to see if we can bring that to our streets and make our streets better again.
And obviously reform doing well here in Barnsley, but in Wakefield as well. That's another council that they've absolutely swept, that was Labour before, and their council leader had to step down after 6 years, and she said that Keir Starmer was toxic on the doorstep. She said that when the councillors were going round knocking on doors for votes, they were saying, we simply can't vote for you even though it's local, because on a national level Keir Starmer has failed us. Is that what you've got from the doorsteps here in Barnsley, and what do you make to the future of Keir Starmer? He's said that he's here to stay.
Absolutely. I am overjoyed about what's happened in Wakefield. I think it's fantastic that we've got this area of Yorkshire that are feeling so disenfranchised with the Labour Party now, how they're failing us on a local level and the national level. I think that in itself speaks volumes. I can't comment on the national politics, but for me, Keir Starmer is doing an absolutely terrible job retaining the vote of the normal working person. He's also doing an absolutely terrible job in looking after communities like this one right here.
Yeah, do you think it is just Keir Starmer, or do you think it's the Labour Party in general, you know, from how they first were there to support the working person, and that's not being felt now?
The thing is, the Labour Party were founded on principles that are no longer still in place. The Labour Party was the party of Labour. It is no longer that party, unfortunately. And right now we've got parties like the one that I became part of. Reform want to be there for the working man. They want to be there to support these communities in the ways that have been failed.
Thank you so much, Luke. Thank you for joining us here on GB News. So that's Luke, one of the new Reform councillors, his take on why Barnsley have turned turquoise, and we'll be speaking to residents and people that visit the town later on to get their views.
All right, Anna, thank you so much. That's Anna Riley, up with one of the new Reform councillors, of which there are 1,450, is there, new councillors from last Friday?
Yes, and Barnsley unusual because it was an all-out election, so all of the councillors
The whole lot.
up for re-election. So dramatic change.
Yeah. Now it's time for the Great British Giveaway. Your chance to enjoy a wonderful summer on us with £76,543.21 tax-free cash to spend anything you like.
Here are all the details.
Are you dreaming of a ton of tax-free cash this summer? We want to make that dream come true with a stunning £76,543 and 21 pence in cash to spend however you like. That is extra cash that you could use to buy those treats you've always wanted, put a new car on the drive, or just relax in the knowledge that this year, pence is an incredible amount of money and it could be all yours. For a chance to win £76,543 and 21 pence in tax-free cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB21 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 26th of June. This is a network giveaway. Entries will be pooled. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Well, coming up next, Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has come out swinging.
The last government was defined by breaking our relationship with Europe. This Labour government will be defined by rebuilding our relationship with Europe, by putting Britain at the heart of Europe.
But will it be enough to keep him in power? We're hearing of one Labour MP has already said, after hearing that speech, he's got to go.
Well, we'll be going through that and more with Annunciata Rees-Mogg and Matthew Torbett, our panel. You're watching Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Poor Matthew.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From court mornings
to warm family brunches,
from football to tennis, in the car,
in the kitchen.
GB News breakfast is there with the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again.
To start your day just right. GB News breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's 11:25. You're watching and listening to Britain's Newsroom. We're live across the United Kingdom with Andrew Pearce and me, Miriam Cates.
Well, it's happened, the great speech, the great moment. Was it enough by the Prime Minister to guarantee he stays in number 10? We have got our fabulous panel with us, Matthew Talbot and Annunciata Rees-Mogg. Well, not a great start for Starmer, because you tell us, Matthew, already one MP who'd kept his light under a bushel says he's got to go.
Yeah, David Smith's come out in the last few moments. He's sort of a blue Labour type faction. I don't think he's on the payroll, but I think he was the government's envoy, for worldwide religion or something like that, Northumberland MP. And I think, especially up that area, I think they're going to get exactly the same as what lots of other people have had, which is, I'd vote for you.
Yeah.
I might even vote for Labour, but I'm not voting whilst he's in charge. And I don't think it is, and other people will disagree, no doubt, that watch GB News. I don't think it is necessarily a Labour brand problem. It will be for some. It is a Keir Starmer problem, a deeply unpopular problem at that.
I mean, Annunciata, it's probably both, isn't it? It's a Labour Party policy problem and it's a Keir Starmer problem. And I think we mustn't forget that although Starmer won this massive majority at the last election, it was on a very slim share of the vote. He's never been that popular.
He hasn't, but it is a party problem. And we just look at them not even able to find a replacement. The Cabinet, there's no standout person who has been great at leading their department or a great prospective Prime Minister. They're really lacking talent. But overall, they're lacking vision. We've got no idea what their perfect future looks like or where they're trying to get to. And that is a party problem, not just a Keir Starmer one. But this speech is not going to save his skin. It might buy him a week, but he is not going to lead us into the next election, however much he talks about the next 10 years.
That was a little bit wide of the mark yesterday, wasn't it, Matt?
I think it just, at the moment, anything he says makes it worse for himself, and I don't know who's... I totally appreciate you've got to come out strong and say, I'm not going anywhere, if that's what you think you want to do, and dig in. You've got to come armed with some policy, which he hasn't. You've got to... Again, it's about responsibility, and responsibility is about taking ownership of bad elections.
But wasn't it a really fundamentally stupid thing to come out and say? And we can look at parallels from when Maggie Thatcher said it and she
said, I'm going on and on and on.
And she went.
He said, no, she's not.
Yeah. Tony Blair did it. He wasn't. Gordon Brown tried to cling on to number 10 after he lost an election.
Yeah.
He was gone. People say this and it rallies their opponents because they think, my God, might be able to put up with 6 months. There is no way I can put up with another 10 years. They've got to go now.
The problem is, Matthew, if anybody does go now, is that will lock Andy Burnham out of the leadership competition. And a lot of people, neutral observers as well, think that he is probably the best option.
Yeah, he is. And if it's anybody else, might as well give Nigel the keys now, in my book. And I don't mean to be flippant about that. Andy Burnham, I'm sick of saying this and nobody wants to listen, but he's the only politician in the country with a net positive, consistent net positive favourability rating. And people say that's because he's got an easy job in Manchester. He's had 3.1% growth over the last decade. No one else has got that in the country. That you can't say that's government's, otherwise the country would have it. He has an MBAC education system that has got people into jobs because of a skills shortage and apprentices in Manchester. The unemployment level in Manchester is at record lows. He has a blueprint that he's done in Manchester. People call it Manchesterism. I think it's a bit cringe, actually. But he has a blueprint that could be put across the country and has answers, particularly social contract-style answers, that people want.
But
He's spoken about defence.
He might have been great. And I'm not going to argue against his successes. But if you look at what happened on Thursday in Manchester, Labour were wiped out. That on one side they were losing to the Greens, on the other side they were losing to Reform.
Seats.
There's barely any red left in Manchester. So even if you get Andy Burnham and he implements great ideas, I don't think it saves Labour.
And that's what I've always said. I don't say he wins the next election, he gives Labour the best chance. I think he's the only person that gives Labour the best chance. And what I would also say is Andy Burnham wasn't on the ballot on Thursday, and you'd laugh at that, obviously, and you'd say you're backing your man. There aren't safe seats for Labour. I wouldn't want him to run in a safe seat, and the seats he's identified aren't safe. It would be a gamble. It would be his political career. But I think you have greater credibility going to the country, having just beaten Reform in a seat they've just taken the whole council in, to say, I can win the country. I've just beaten Reform locally. I can do that nationally. Anyone can go win in Manchester Central or, you know, somewhere in inner city Liverpool. Anyone can do that. If you can show you've got the balls, really, to take Reform on and beat them, then I think that makes you even more credible as a future leader.
And the other problem, that if they go now, Angela Rayner, well, she'll run, because, as we know, she said she'd rather gouge her eyes out than allow Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, to have a clear run at the leadership. They obviously get on very well. She has this sword of Damocles hangover about her tax affairs. We think it's going to be resolved quite quickly, but if it isn't, that's a problem.
Yes.
She's under investigation over whether she should or shouldn't have paid this £40,000, which cost her a cabinet job.
Yes, the messages I've always had from Angela and her team is that she doesn't really want to be Prime Minister. She doesn't like the invasion of privacy. She felt it a lot during the election and also, you know, more recently with the HMRC affairs. My understanding is the HMRC affairs have been sorted.
Yeah.
She must be sat on that information for some reason. She believes it puts her in the clear. My concern is mud sticks. Doesn't matter. It'd be too technical to explain to the public, and they go, you're a tax cheat, you didn't pay what you were supposed to. Whether it clears you, whether you paid the right amount that you thought you had to pay for something else. And we've had leaders before that didn't really want to be the leader, and that ended terribly with Jeremy Corbyn. So I just think she might be pushed to if Wes goes. The only positive, I suppose, for people like myself is that she would let Andy Burnham in the building, and you got sort of better players on the pitch, but I don't think it'd be very good.
But Angela Rayner yesterday put out a 1,000-word manifesto, and either she believes in outlawing freehold, or she doesn't understand what the word freehold means. Now, it's difficult with Angela Rayner to know which of the two is true, because she is not known as the sharpest tool in the box. She's canny.
Can we stop talking about toolmakers, please?
She's not a toolmaker's daughter. But it's really worrying when you've got a prospective Prime Minister who doesn't seem to understand what freehold is.
Not everyone will know what you're referring to, so just as what she said in that statement.
So she said she was talking about the renters' rights, renters' reform bill, and that leaseholders are being ripped off by ground rents.
Yeah, she's obsessed by it.
And so she said we would scrap freehold for good. That means the government nationalising every single person in this country's home.
Yes, your driveway, your garden.
Everything. And I'm hoping she didn't mean it, because it is pure communism.
Well, I think a lot of this comes
but ignorance
from her partner, Sam Tarry, who's very left-wing.
Well, if it's on purpose, it's terrible. If it's accidental,
I think
it's
more
terrible.
simple than that. I think she's apologised and she's got that bit wrong. It shows a poor lack of attention to detail, and I think the charge that's been sort of put to her, and also Clive Lewis that put out a big long tweet last night in support of Andy Burnham, is it's likely done by AI. And my concern is if the talent pool is so shallow that we haven't got original thought and we're just relying on ChatGPT for our political ideologies, then we might as well pack up and go home now.
And talking of talent pool, I was very struck when the Business Secretary, Peter Carr, was on GBNews this morning, when told that Wes Streeting is telling Number 10 that he's thinking of preparing for a leadership bid, said, that's because we're a party with so much talent. We've got seeds and seeds of talent. So much talent.
That's a good spin, to be fair.
Yeah, but hang on. So much talent, they brought back 2 old crocs called Gordon Brown and Harriet Harman, who, I mean, on what planet is that a good move?
Bizarre. My concern again with that is I think Gordon Brown is a fantastic voice on things like child poverty, and he's held the government to account on that. I think wrongly, but people will have their views. People think he's the man that crashed the economy, so don't bring him back to be the envoy on global
He
finance.
went a long way to help it.
And also, Harriet Harman...
He changed the banking rules, he changed the pension rules, all of which undermined our economy and made us much more vulnerable
talking about the
to the crash.
mortgage lenders that people put at his door and wasn't. The other issue with Harriet Harman, there's many, but she was given the post of Special Envoy to Violence Against Women and Girls last year.
Yeah,
You've just basically regurgitated the same post. So I don't know who it spoke to, I don't know what it was about, and it just showed a number 10 sort of bereft of ideas.
Also, a lot of those people who voted reform last week in these, what I would call old traditional working class seats, hate all the wokery, all the PC stuff. She's the high priest of it.
She doesn't believe a woman is a woman. It's a bit of a failure if you're going to be the women envoy.
That's why she's known as Harriet Harperson.
She is Harriet Harperson, and she also allowed Pi, the paedophile information exchange, to join a group of which she was the legal advisor, or to be part of it. And I'm afraid that rules out girls, and not thinking a woman's a woman rules out women.
Just very quickly, Enunciata, on the reform issue, do you think that actually reform could have a problem now, because they've already won over quite a lot of Conservative voters who are probably quite low-tax, small-state voters. They've now won over a huge amount of working-class voters, which the polls show are much more kind of pro-nationalisation, a bigger state, more welfare, not necessarily unfair welfare, but having a welfare state. Do you think actually this success could be a challenge for reform in bringing those two bases together?
I absolutely do, and I said on Popular Conservatism's podcast on Friday that I think there will be a schism in reform, and whether it's 50-50 or 10-90, I've no idea. But I think they are two such different groups now that it will be impossible to keep them together.
And you think that will come before the election?
I think that will come before the election.
I mean, to be fair, this is exactly the problem that Boris Johnson faced in 2019. He'd brought, not to the extent that reform have, but he'd brought that realignment together. And then MPs representing rural constituencies like myself, people representing Surrey constituencies, completely different interests. Very difficult to balance.
And then you've still got Rupert Lowe, who did very well.
And I think
Yarmouth.
Restore will take
an
element of...
They put up more candidates.
Yeah.
Thank you both very much for your input this morning.
Matthew, before you go, this time next week, will Keir Starmer have resigned?
Depends on the amount of MPs that come out today and tomorrow.
Yeah, come on,
I don't know.
I don't know. Fair enough. Yeah.
Well, thank you both.
I hope not, if you really want an answer.
You want Andy Burnham back, and he's not in position yet.
Correct.
Well, you're honest, we'll give you that. Well, we'll have all the latest from Westminster. Will the Cabinet be getting their knives out, or was this speech long enough to prolong Keir Starmer's leadership? This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update, brought to you from the Met Office. It's going to be a fairly fresh week. It's still going to feel quite warm in the sunshine. There will be plenty of that today. However, there is a band of rain sinking southwards, all due to this cold front pushing down into parts of England and Wales through this afternoon. Behind it, even colder air is set to arrive. It's quite clear air, though, so there should be quite a lot of sunshine, particularly across western areas in the north this afternoon. This band of rain, though, pushing across the south coast into this evening and late afternoon. There will be some heavier bursts, but I think mainly it's just going to introduce a bit more cloud just for a time. Now, in the sunshine, temperatures will climb towards the mid-teens for a time in the south, closer to 10 or 11 degrees further north. Quite a fresh breeze across the east as well. That will bring a significant wind chill. Now, here's that rain band still clearing the far south coast through this evening. Further north, a dry picture for much of Wales, Northern Ireland, Northern England, as well as much of Scotland. However, notice we do have some rain pushing into the Western Isles through this evening. That rain will push further east into more mainland Scotland by the overnight period as well. But there will be plenty of clear skies quite widely across England and Wales in particular as that rain band sinks southwards into the near continent, and that will allow temperatures to fall away quite widely below zero rurally. We are expecting quite a widespread grass frost across parts of England and Wales rurally, particularly across more northern and central areas. Northern Ireland and Scotland seeing more of that cloud due to this next rain band, so it's not going to be quite as cold as it was last night, but there is still a chance of frost here and there under the clearest skies. Then through Tuesday, this cloud and rain pushes south and eastwards through the day, so some brighter spells to start the day across the south and east. Some mist and fog around very first thing, and plenty of sunshine into the afternoon as well, but it will remain fresh. Bye-bye.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What did she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace
Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
As soon as it hits 11 and the headlines come in,
Late Edition brings you the breaking news from all the front pages.
because the news is going to happen.
So get a head start today.
Patrick Christie's tonight, Late Edition.
Alex Armstrong tonight, Late Edition. From 11 o'clock every night.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Twenty minutes to 12. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates, and we're still just getting over the excitement of the Prime Minister's keynote speech, which may or may not have saved him.
Well, we'll see. Well, in times of such political turmoil, are we losing the ability to disagree well? But there is hope for the future, because many of Britain's school pupils are now learning the art of debating and public speaking.
Which is very good. Last week, the English-speaking union held the finals of its 2026 May Schools debating competition in London, bringing together finalists from schools across the nation.
Well, the winners of this year's competition were St Joseph's College in Ipswich, and they join us now. So welcome to Josh, Alex, Ademide, Ben and Dr Rice, their teacher. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Now, can you tell us a little bit about this debating competition? What did you do? What did you have to do to get into the finals?
So we have the first and second speaker first, and these are 7 minutes long, and then you have the summary speak, which is 5 minutes long, done by Josh. Then you have points of information, or POIs as they're called, and they allow the opposing team or opposing bench to then try and put off the team as it is. And it's really exciting opportunity and experiences for us to be a part of.
And how much swatting, revising did you guys have to do before this? Because you presumably you went through various rounds before you got to the semi-final and then the final. Was there a lot of revising?
Yeah, there's always quite a bit of reworking with these things. You go through an initial stage and then you reiterate and reiterate until you get to a nice final product with your teammates just to build a really strong argument.
I mean, the boys have been working for this since November, so it really is a long journey.
And did you feel nervous for the debates?
Yeah, I would say we were quite nervous, especially for the semi-finals, as we're in the Churchill run with lots of other schools. But then after we realised we won the semis, it was more excitement because of 40 minutes to prepare for the grand finals, which was in a massive room with a large audience. So that was really enjoyable.
Now, the Churchill room, that's the Churchill room in the Houses of Parliament, is it?
No, it's actually in the ESU headquarters.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, absolutely. And he was a chairperson, actually, of the English-speaking union back in the 1920s.
So you were in the exalted footsteps of one of the greatest debaters of all time, Sir Winston Churchill. Did that make you feel very proud?
Josh?
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. It's the oldest and most prestigious debating competition in the entirety of the UK. And it just kind of felt surreal to just take a part of that, let alone win it in the first place. But, yeah.
And just tell us, what was the debate, what was the subject in the final, and what was your position and how you won it?
We were opposing the motion that this House would ban neutral flag participation. I feel like for us, it was quite a good one because it was all about separating the individual athletes from the politics of their country, which is like a really nice thing to argue for in the finals.
And what do you think you've learned from taking part in the competition? Did you feel that your confidence improved as you went along?
I mean, it was a lot of confidence, but it's also just the importance of like taking part in civil discourse and stopping yourself from falling into circular reasoning. And as much as it's about arguments, I'd say 80% a listening game. I mean, just listening actively and dissecting the arguments and working together as a team to reject those and counteract them is the most important part of it, I think.
Not even just like listening to your opposition, but also like listening to your teammates to ensure that you're not like stepping on their toes with your arguments. Like you really need to work together to build a strong foundation for what you're saying.
Right. And teacher here, you're obviously very proud of your winning team. Did you give them many tips?
Well, I've been working with, 3 of these students really from year 7, and last year Josh joined the team as well. And it really has been an evolution of years of hard work. This particular competition begins back in November. And as Josh mentioned, it is the most prestigious competition in this country and in Wales. And I'm so proud of, the semi-final as well. In the midst of their A-level examinations, the boys were opposing the membership of the Security Council being removed from the 5 permanent members. So these boys really have to think on their feet and critically not only evaluate sources, but rebut arguments that are coming from their opposition.
Now, I want to ask you boys, do any of you, having done this debating, can you foresee a career in public speaking, or maybe, dare I say, one or two of you might like to become an MP?
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, I can see it somewhere down the line, but something else first.
Yeah. Can I just say,
earn some money first.
Yeah, with these boys, the future of this country is very bright. If we have got politicians like these boys at the helm, it would be a very bright future for the UK, having these boys at the forefront of politics.
And Dr. Rice, why do you think it's important for students to get involved in debating and public speaking?
Well, I think, young people these days, one of the criticisms is they're never off their phones and they're doom scrolling and so on. But, these boys are using technology to their advantage. They're delving into research, they're critically analysing sources. And here at St. Joe's, our values are aspiration, respect and confidence, and debating competitions really help to bring that to the fore. And so I do think, RSC skills will be so important and are so important in their adult lives. And so really, I think more schools should take part in debating competitions like the English Speaking Union.
Now, just before we let you go, we do have to say Miriam is a proud mum here because Josh, Kate's there, is her very, very, very fine son. So quite interesting for us to interview you, Josh. What is it like watching your mum on television?
I think it's just normalised now, but it's definitely an interesting turn of events to see her interviewing me today.
Yeah, exactly.
He doesn't watch me because he's at school.
Quite right too. On catch up. Yeah. And being an MP, you see, if she can do it, you can do it.
It's not very good job security, though, is it?
Yeah, it's not out of the picture, but I mean, it's a very, very clearly stressful job.
You've got university ahead of you, boys, and very many congratulations to all of you. And you must be very proud of them, Dr. Rice.
Absolutely. This is definitely the proudest moment of my career. And, I look forward to seeing the boys, next year going back to the English Speaking Union. Josh will be there to watch us as well, but these 3 will be competing. And if you are free, come along to see the best public speakers in the country. And at the minute, St. Joseph's College and these boys are the best debaters in the country.
Well,
thank you so much.
Great to meet you all. Just to remind you, they are the winners of that competition. They are St. Joseph's College in Ipswich. And the prize is, what is the prize full title? The National Schools Debating Championship.
That's right. And they got to wave a mace around, but I don't think they actually win anything.
Well done. And best of luck with your academic careers too.
Absolutely. Josh, Alex, Demi, Ben and Dr. Rice, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Oh, I'm very proud of it.
Absolutely, hugely. It was amazing. And what was so brilliant was I got to witness the entire day of debating, narrowing down from the finalists to the very last final. And the quality of the speeches, the research, the public speaking, these kids who are 15, 16, 17.
Yeah, amazing.
Absolutely incredible, from schools across the country. It just really gave you hope that actually
and
this
as
is not
Dr.
a
Wright
lost
says,
art.
all these kids, they don't always spend all their time on their phones and their devices.
It's so good to learn confidence. They were nervous, but it was really, really good to see them step up to the plate. So very much worth a listen.
Now up next, Keir Starmer promising to prove his doubters wrong. Can he possibly hang on?
But first, if you're in search of some holiday sun, here's the forecast for our top European destinations.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello. There is plenty of sunny spells across Europe, but also the risk of some showers that could turn thundery and still pleasant in that sunshine. We do have this area of low pressure close to Portugal and Spain, and that is just driving showers as we head through Tuesday. Drier, though, across much of France and across Italy. Still a few showers in the mix, but across the Mediterranean, generally fine and settled and feeling warm. There'll be a mixture of sunny spells elsewhere and temperatures in the low 20s.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, this is Jubes & Co with you.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie is here to GB News, Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection. Tune in to GB News, anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
MUQ is so hilarious. It's rude. It's basically Sesame Street, X-rated. But I always bang on. The interesting about the last things, I'm always like, make me laugh and I will cry. Make me laugh and I will care. Did not apply to Cuckoo's Nest. However, Avenue Q, we've got a little jolly clip here for you to see.
What's it like living on Avenue Q?
You're gonna love it!
I remember seeing the original production, and shall I be absolutely honest with you, when you came in, because I've never seen you before, I thought, he's brought one of the puppets with him, because all I could see was this little fluffy black head. He is adorable, I have to say.
He's being very good today.
He is.
So yeah, Avenue Q is a burst of joy. There is also, you only got to look for, there's actual puppet sex, and I think I'm quite jaded, and I think I've seen it all, but really, my jaw dropped. It's fun. The people that created it, one of the guys, Robert Lopez, wrote Frozen, wrote one of my favourite shows, Little Shop of Horrors. So he knows how to write quick, fun musicals, but it's also got huge heart. It's about all of us searching for belonging. Who are we? They all discover life is not easy when you get out into the real world. But they build a community, and it's inclusive and wonderful, and I love it very, very much. And it's on at the Shaftesbury Theatre. It's the 20th anniversary production.
Well,
That's
it's nice
glorious.
to end on a positive note, something that we should all go and see. And have a good laugh. We need good laughs at the moment.
We certainly do.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I've been in Westminster for a long time, but I know that though power may be here, its effect on people's lives is across the whole of the country. We may be where rules are made, but it's where they're implemented that matters. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for forthright and frank discussion on where Britain has come from, where it's going, and where it will end up. That's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Vox Populi, Vox Dei.
Now, welcome back. Reform UK has taken control of its first council in Greater London, winning Havering from the Conservatives. But how do they feel after that big speech?
We're going to go now to GB News reporter Will Godley, who is live in the London Borough of Havering. Well,
Well, good morning to both of you. This was a historic result last week when Havering was won by Reform UK. The first time in 60 years that no Conservative councillor was elected here. Reform UK taking 39 of the 55 seats here. And the one thing everybody telling me they want to see is change. Some people hopeful Reform can deliver that. Other people sceptical whether they will be able to do that as a new party. But whether or not the Prime Minister should stay or go, well, I've been speaking to people whether they think the Prime Minister can cling on after his speech earlier on this morning.
It's time for a change because he's been in 2 years and he's very unpopular and you can't rekindle your popularity. Once political, it's like people like Tony Blair, Margaret Thatcher in the past, once their political credibility goes, they never recover it. So it's time they had a change.
Well, he's muddling along best he can, which considering with all the hassle he's getting and grief from media, I think he's not too bad. Not my ideal choice, but he's better than Fishy Blue Tack.
Doesn't feel like they really stand for anything at the moment. It's just carrying on with the status quo. I know Keir Starmer's going to stand up today and say, like, we need to make loads of changes, but is he going to do it? Don't know. Probably not.
Well, with the Prime Minister, of course, outlining why the country should stick with him earlier on today. Will his party let him take Labour into the next general election? Well, with results like what we saw in Havering worrying many in the Labour Party, only time will tell.
Thanks, Will. That's Will Godley. That's it from Britain's Newsroom on an historic day. Is it the end of the Prime Minister? We'll know more in the coming days. Up next, Good Afternoon Britain with Mark and Nana.
Oh, well. We heard the speech. Were you incentivised, inspired, or did you just think more of the same? What about the small boats? Didn't mention it.
Yeah, and 2 more MPs have come forward to say that Keir Starmer should resign.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Looking at the week ahead, it is going to be feeling cool for the time of year. We do have sunny spells today and then more in the way of showers as we head midweek. We have an area of low pressure out there today, though, and this cold front is bringing outbreaks of rain across Wales, the Midlands, the southeast of England, and continuing to break up as it pushes its way southwards. To the north of that, though, plenty of sunny spells across Northern Ireland, much of Scotland, Northern England, and eventually into Wales. It is feeling cool, though, for the time of year, and with this northerly wind along eastern coast, it's going to be feeling particularly cool here. Through Monday evening then, we actually hold on to a good deal of sunshine initially across much of Scotland, so a fine end to the day here. But to the west, we'll start to see the next weather system approaching, bringing some outbreaks of rain across the far west of Scotland. Across Northern Ireland, some late evening sunshine, and that persists across much of southern Scotland into northern England, Wales and the south. Still some showery outbreaks of rain still possible across the southern parts of England. So through Monday evening, we have the next weather front approaching across Scotland and Northern Ireland. So cloud thickening here.